5.
Curry hits a three.
4.
Houston with a drive. Deep left field.
3.
Patrick hit by Watt. Sack number 10.
2.
Messi with a record-breaking goal.
1.
Welcome to BSS Sports. Now, here are your hosts, Steve and Trevor.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of BSS Sports. My name is Steven Schill with the ever-lovely Trevor Struthers. And Miss Universe was last night, and France was the one that took the cake.
Steve, isn't this a sports show?
You know what? I want to talk about Miss Universe for just a minute. Just a single minute. Canada made it, though. I think it was like the top 8 or something, but then we got eliminated.
Well, that's not bad.
But that's the same as our soccer and multiple other sports. With that being said...
It's probably more successful than the soccer.
Yeah, you're right. Fair enough. So the whole weekend was very busy with a multitude of things. It was Film and TV Writers Award Show. It was Miss Universe. We had the NHL All-Star Weekend, as well as the NFL Pro Bowl skills competition and the game as well. So there was a lot to go off of on. We'll try to talk on a bit of everything. A lot of stuff happened. And, of course, the Super Bowl coming up next weekend. New England versus Atlanta. I want to talk about the Pro Bowl really quickly, and then we'll go into the Super Bowl. So the Pro Bowl this year, everybody talks about how the game is completely irrelevant, this and that, and the MVP this year was getting a car. But there was people who are taking it a bit more serious than it probably should have been. If you were watching the game, you'd notice that if you were a friend of the producer of the show, they were probably having a mental breakdown because players couldn't stop swearing at the refs and they were unable to bleep it out. Mainly the Seattle Seahawks with Michael Bennett and Richard Sherman screaming at a ref. It was really weird how that happened, especially for a Pro Bowl game that's supposed to be fun. And then Jimmy Graham of the Seahawks got hit pretty hard and then started freaking out, complaining, and just kind of went nuts over it. Why are NFL players suddenly taking the Pro Bowl more serious, even though nobody cares and it's not for everything?
I mean, I think there's always a certain amount of competition when you get guys that are that good at what they do. I mean, we're talking about the best football players in the world. So when you're at that level, I mean, you care when it's on national television, even though like 12 people watch it. When it's on national television, you feel like there's people watching you. You want to go out there and you want to look good. With that being said, I mean, the whole issue for the Pro Bowl and their attempt to try to get people to actually watch it is the fact that, I mean, hey, football is a contact sport. It's a grind-through sport. And, I mean, that's the exact opposite of what an all-star game has stood to be, where people don't go out there and try their hardest. They try to avoid physical contact so they don't have to deal with injury. I mean, that's why you could say the Pro Bowl is at the end of the season, because I mean, they have a full off season to try to get healthy if they were to get hurt in that game. But and I mean, they also have that extra week with the whole Super Bowl thing. But I mean, yeah, the Pro Bowl is always. I mean, I've never watched the Pro Bowl. I probably never will watch the Pro Bowl. I've never been the world's biggest football fan just in general, but I mean, now even that's turning this, I have no interest in the Pro Bowl just because, I mean, hockey is finding a way to get things done, and I'm sure we'll touch on that. Hockey's finding a way to get things done, well, the way they have it, well, because, you know, there's not going to be a lot of physical contact. Baseball's not a physical sport, so I can watch those all-star games, but it's the Pro Bowl, a sport that's meant to be physical all the time, that is tough to watch from an all-star perspective.
So the Super Bowl is coming up next weekend. All the great commercials if you have the American station, and then not so if you have the Canadian ones. But it's an intriguing matchup. I want to ask first, do you think that it would have been a bigger deal if the Packers made it through and they were the opponent instead of the Falcons?
It could have been. Just from a quarterback perspective, I mean, like I've said this entire time, nobody gives the Falcons enough credit. Nobody gives Matt Ryan enough credit with what he's been able to do this season. And he should be in the top 3 definitely for MVP, if not, you know, the winner or the runner-up. So nobody there gives enough credit for Matt Ryan, but I think a lot of people would love to see Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady go head-to-head. Just Because why? I mean, they're arguably the two biggest names when it comes to quarterbacks in football. And like I said, nobody gives Matt Ryan the respect he deserves. And I mean, the Falcons are a real dark horse in this Super Bowl. I mean, I could see them pulling it off, but the Patriots are a real tough team to get through.
So that's the next question that comes about, is you have Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, arguably the dynamic duo, if you will, making it to numerous Super Bowls at this point, unbreakable success in recent times. There's nobody that's matched what they've done. I mean, sure, you can throw in the fact that they've been caught cheating on a few occasions, but still, do you think this is New England's game to lose?
I think it always is whenever they make it to the Super Bowl. I mean, it was like that definitely when they went against the Giants and they were undefeated. But, yeah, I mean, this has to be their game to lose from the perspective of Atlanta. I mean, like I keep saying, and I just said it like 2 minutes ago, nobody gives Atlanta enough credit. Atlanta is obviously going in there the underdog. I mean, maybe you could make the argument the Packers could be more of a favorite than Atlanta right now had the Packers won a couple weeks ago, because the Packers would have been on that incredible run ever since, Aaron Rodgers called the shot. So, and just because Aaron Rodgers, even though they have nothing besides Aaron Rodgers, just because it's Aaron Rodgers, I feel like you just give them a bit more credit, which would probably be the wrong thing to do. This Atlanta team is very dynamic. I love their offense. The questions I do have is, will their defense be able to shut down Tom Brady? But I guess we're going to find out on Sunday.
So, switching over to hockey on the weekend, it was the All-Star Game, and something they did that was kind of cool is they had the top 100 NHL players of history at the game if they were still alive, and there was a couple of players in the game that were named to the top 100 list, and Sidney Crosby being named one of them. And if you don't know, he's won 2 Stanley Cups with the Penguins, 2 Olympic gold medals, and a World Cup with Canada. So that is one of the players, as well as Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, Alex Ovechkin, and Duncan Keith. Jaromir Jagr was also on the top 100 list. However, he was not on the All-Star roster for this year. But I don't know what it is with these All-Star weekends, and I know it was in LA. I know they were hyping it up with the big old themes, but I just felt like I didn't care.
I feel like, that's just the stigma around All-Star games in general, is that nobody really does care. And hockey, not to the same extent as football. They follow through the same path of, when you look at hockey, it's a very physical and it's a grind-through sport. Not quite as much as football, as I mentioned, but with hockey, it's a physical game. Now, what I like about what the NHL has done the last couple of years is everybody loves 3-on-3 overtime, right? Why don't we make a game out of it with the best players in the game? And to get to see a guy like Erik Karlsson or even a PK Subban perform like that 3-on-3 for a long period of time with some of the best players from their division, it's that alone I like is pretty incredible. And what they're doing is they're taking taking the focus from the physical part of the game and bringing it to the skill. And now that there's so much room out there for these skilled players, this should have been obvious from the start. These are the best skilled players in the league, essentially. These are the all-stars. And so what you're doing is you're putting their skills for everybody to watch. If there's an NHL event you're going to watch on All-Star Weekend going back to the past decade, it's probably going to be the skills competition. Why? Because you're seeing these great players put their skills to work. You're seeing the same sort of thing now with this 3-on-3 format that they have, because now there's a lot more room out there for the players to do a lot more, and it's not obviously by any means a close checking game. You get odd man rushes going either way, and it makes for, I'm sure, for the goaltenders, but a really entertaining game for the fans.
So, on the All-Star game itself, the MVP, Wayne Simmons. Who in the halibut, before the All-Star game started, would think that Wayne Simmons would be the MVP? And please tell me about how John Scott did it last year. Are we expecting someone kind of, not as big of a name to win it every year now?
Well, the funny thing about Wayne Simmons winning it is that when you look at Wayne Simmons and his overall game with he's a grinding player. So the fact that he was able to win it is, you mentioned John Scott winning it a year ago. That was just a great story. The fact that the fans vote, and Well, it was a great story from the fan perspective. I'm sure the NHL hated every second of it, but it was like the fans trolling the NHL, and I'm sure the fans definitely got their love. I mean, I'll admit I don't vote for the NHL All-Star Game anymore, but I probably voted a few times at least for John Scott last year, so I'll admit to that. But yeah, for Wayne Simmons winning it this year, I mean, some guys, it can surprise you when they get to the All-Star Game, and Wayne Simmons is a guy, I mean, he's a tremendous player, but he's a grinding player, so you don't know how he's going to do in that kind of format, but he was able to excel and to win the MVP.
So going over to basketball, talk about Carmelo Anthony in a moment. But the All-Star roster was released, and there's a lot of people talking about how Russell Westbrook didn't make the starters for the Western Conference. My question for you, Trevor, is ever since this Kevin Durant thing happened, do you feel that with Russell's attitude, has it gained him more fans, or has it kind of made him look like the bad guy, even though it was Durant that left? But with the attitude that Westbrook is having, do you think that it's possible that he's getting a villain-ish tag? Or what's your thoughts?
I think from a certain perspective, everybody feels for Westbrook. I mean, I'm having a hard issue trying to picture it where Durant's not the villain in this whole Westbrook-Durant scenario. But just from a whole of what Westbrook has been able to do this year, I mean, he is the best player in the NBA. He's the MVP favorite to this point of the season. He should be starting on that NBA All-Star team. I mean, for crying out loud, he has more triple-doubles than the five starters combined for the Western All-Stars. So, I mean, that alone is a very telling stat. I mean, obviously, anytime you're able to score a triple-double, you're having a fantastic game all over the court, or even just offensively. I mean, depending on how aggressive you are with the offensive rebounds. But to be able to put together a triple-double as often as Westbrook's been able to do so, I mean, it just shows how you're tearing up the league. And the fact that the Thunder are, I mean, they definitely really got off to that hot start, and it was to do with Westbrook. And, I mean, that's the Thunder right now. It's what Russell Westbrook and what he's able to do for that team. And he's been on a tear all season long. It's just a really confusing thing because it should be obvious, but I mean, this is the downside to fan voting, is that sometimes, you know, the fans don't always necessarily show up. And I mean, going into the season, if anything, you think the Thunder may have lost fans because Durant left. Not that it was up to the Thunder, but I mean, fans jump around, and we know they do that a lot in basketball. It's amazing the amount of Miami Heat fans that you can find in Canada when LeBron James went to Miami, and it's probably the same now with the Cavs and Golden State. Fans jump around like it's crazy. So I mean, the Thunder could have lost fans. That maybe had something to do with it. But Steph Curry, even though not having nearly as good of a year, is just a bigger name because of what he's been able to do going into the season. And a fan vote can sometimes really bite somebody in the butt. In the case of the NHL last year with John Scott, and in the case of Russell Westbrook this year in the NBA.
So you brought up a good point there with LeBron James and how everybody watches what LeBron does. And there's been a lot of controversy lately with the Cavaliers and just their whole team. The NBA as a whole, just there seems to be a lot of drama lately. And one of the big things being brought up is Carmelo Anthony and what's going on with him, because it seems apparent that his time in New York is slowly coming to an end. And then the talks coming out for Kevin Love for Carmelo was being released, and it just, when I first heard that was being offered, I was kind of confused, but I also somewhat get it. I feel, to an extent, I don't know if it's just because LeBron has such a shadow with Kyrie and all of them, you can't really build a team off Kevin Love anymore. And I want to know your opinion on this, because when he was with the Timberwolves, he seemed like the guy, the LeBron James of the Timberwolves, if you will. But even if they were going to switch, I don't feel that Carmelo would have been that good of a fit with LeBron. They're basically the exact same player, which is good to an extent, like body size and whatnot, but I just don't feel that Carmelo is in a right mindset for this anymore.
Well, I mean, they're both guys on the part of the Cavaliers that you would expect to have the ball, like a LeBron, Kyrie Irving being in there and all that. I mean, it gets clogged at some point. We thought maybe that would happen with Golden State. Golden State, I mean, they have turned out to be as good as they seem. And they're finding ways to get it done, even though they got to share the ball a bit more than they otherwise would have had to with less star power. But I mean, that's the plus of having star power. The thing is, has Carmelo passed his prime? Is that the way, like if I'm the Cavaliers, do I change anything? I mean, sure, they've gone through a bit of a rough spell, but I mean, nobody's going to be able to catch. Like the Raptors are that one team that maybe could catch them if things go their way, and things aren't going well for the Raptors really the last little bit either. So for the Cavaliers, I mean, I think you got to stick it out. I don't even think you go near Carmelo Anthony in that whole situation. As for the Knicks going for a Kevin Love, I mean, I think you want to aim younger and just kind of build up towards the bottom. I don't know if that's the way Phil Jackson, I mean, what a mess that is with him there. The guy was a championship coach, and I mean, that's not like what he's doing right now with, I mean, it's like Wayne Gretzky coaching the Coyotes. Just because you're great at one thing doesn't mean you'll be great at another aspect in that same sport. And it's really a mess with the Knicks. I mean, maybe they'll be able to turn it around eventually, but I mean, I think you got to aim younger and try to figure out your backcourt definitely before trying to go get a guy like a Kevin Love.
And yes, Steve Harvey got the answer correct at the end of the Miss Universe. That's it for this edition of BSS Sports. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at BSS Sports, archiving all of our works on YouTube at BSS Productions. For Trevor Struthers and myself, Steven Schill, we'll catch you next Monday.